Witch in Charm's Way, a cozy mystery audiobook, written and narrated by R.K. Dreaming. Part 14. What? I cried out in shock and hastily scrambled out of bed. Had the dratted cat really told me there was a man sneaking around downstairs in the castle? Said dratted cat, Captain Villain gave a hiss. My throwing aside my duvet had disturbed his comfortable position. There's no point going after him, he said irritably. He's long gone. Then why didn't you wake me before? For what purpose? He was a wizard. You'd have been in more than a little trouble if I had woken you up while he was still here. A wizard? Do you know who he was? Certainly. Don't be annoying. Just tell me already, please, I added. Pretty please with a cherry on top. Pretty please with prawns on top. I will even buy some for you. Ooh, I like the way she thinks. Well? Lorcan Hardwick. What? I said in surprise. I saw him with my own 2 eyes, and I have excellent night vision, you know. He blinked his bright green eyes as if to demonstrate how wonderful they were. But why would he be here? I gasped. Gosh, he drawled. One would almost think your families didn't share a centuries-long enmity. That sneaky git, I said. So he is trying to scare me away from Mansion House, and he pretended to be so nice as well. He is nice, said Captain Villain. Fairly insipid, but nice. We've even hung out at Kitten Cove a couple of times. That just shows that you have terrible taste in people, I said. And yet here I am with you, he said. Very funny, Mr. Smarty Pants. And what use are those 7 ghosts if they're just going to let anyone in around here? I suppose they might not mind him, said Captain Villain. After all, he is family. He was always around here scoffing cakes in the cafe since he was a child. And you haven't even gone up to say hello to them yet. Perhaps they're a little bit peeved. Are you sure he's gone? I said. Are you sure I'm talking to you? He said. I gave a grunt of annoyance. If Lorcan Hardwick thinks he's going to get away with this, he's got another think coming. I am going to report him. You do that, he said. Now, will you let me get some sleep? Having Captain Villain stay with me was very reassuring, and I dropped off to sleep again not long afterwards. When I woke in the morning, he was gone. My bedroom door was firmly shut. I had no idea how he had gotten out. I called the police station to let them know about the break-in. Given who their new chief of police was, I didn't mention that I thought his cousin Lorcan Hardwick was responsible. They said they'd send an officer over to take a look around. It was my misfortune that the officer they chose to send around was none other than Agent High and Mighty himself. No bodies in the garden this morning, he said, by way of greeting. I scowled at him and made an effort to drag my eyes away from admiring the way his pristine, pale blue shirt fits so nicely over his broad shoulders. Stupid Hollywood shoulders. They were the kind of shoulders that werewolves had so effortlessly. And yet Chris Constantine was a humble. I remembered mooning over him as a teenager when he'd first landed his Captain Shield role in Hollywood. This news about a mere humble had been worthy of making the Daily Oracle because he'd run off with a famous succubus. Their love affair had been the stuff of dreams. She'd defied her family for him. Oh, what a dazzling fairy tale romance, the sort that we Westbrim girls dreamed of. And then she died so tragically. Just the sort of thing our teenage Westbrim hearts had wept over. I frowned. Except now it turned out that Chris Constantine couldn't be a humble. Otherwise he wouldn't be here in a law enforcement capacity in Brimstone Bay. Humbles did not know about magic. "What are you, anyway?" I said irritably. He gave me a cool look. "We are not here to talk about me," he said in a clipped voice. "I'm told you have a break-in to report?" "Yes, come in." It was difficult to describe the break-in to him, seeing as I hadn't witnessed it myself. I found myself stumbling over the words, avoiding any mention of Captain Villain. It would have been easier if I'd been talking to an officer who wasn't scowling at me in a disbelieving manner. "Lorcan Hardwick," he said sceptically when I had finished. I glared. "Just because he's your new chief's cousin doesn't put him above the law." Chris Constantine walked around the castle with me, checking all the ground floor doors and windows. They were all locked. "You said this castle is enchanted and that no one can ether hop into it?" he asked. I nodded. "But a wizard could have got in some other way," I insisted. I didn't mention the tunnels. The fewer people who knew about them, the better. He asked me to show him if anything had been stolen. "Not that I've noticed," I said to him. "Aunt Adele said nothing is missing either." "And did she see the intruder?" he said. "No." "So it was only you who saw him?" "Not exactly." When I told him it was Captain Villain who had seen the intruder, his face turned to thunder. "Is this a joke to you?" he said coldly. "Do you seriously think that Chief Hardwick is going to arrest his cousin on the say-so of a cat?" "I believe Captain Villain," I said hotly. I was beginning to see that I had made a big mistake. I had been so angry with Lorcan that I had not considered what this whole thing would sound like to an outsider. And now Chris Constantine thought I had made the whole thing up. "I am in the middle of a murder investigation," he growled. "Which is why you should be interested," I said. "A body turned up on my property, and now there's been a break-in. I have a right to be worried for my safety." "Are you implying that this alleged break-in is connected with the murder?" "Of course not, but If you feel unsafe, you should go and stay somewhere else," he said. I scowled at him. "I will not be driven out of my home. I bet that's exactly why he did it. Good timing to cause maximum terror, wouldn't you say?" "The feud between your two families is no police matter," he said icily. "You are wasting my time." "I am not. Haven't you heard of witches' familiars? Captain Villain had no reason to lie." "You told me the cat was not your familiar," he said, "and we've already discussed that cats cannot be witnesses to crimes." "Well, this cat has powers you wouldn't have dreamed of," I muttered under my breath. "Pardon?" he said acidly. I didn't bother to repeat myself. "Look," I said, trying for a more reasonable tone. "It's well known that the Hardwicks hoped to inherit Mansion House themselves. I have reason to believe that they want to get me off the property. Yesterday, Giselle Hardwick threatened to run me out of town, and then I overheard her talking to Lorcan about a plan." "Overheard?" he said, looking unimpressed. "Are you determined to dislike me?" I asked him with a scowl. He didn't rise to the bait. "I'm trying my very best to be professional, but you are not making it easy. Investigating this murder with Chief Hardwick on my back hasn't been easy. The people in this town do not want to cooperate. The last thing I need is you dragging me into this nonsense." "How dare you call it nonsense? I am not some stupid hysterical woman." He looked at me like he thought otherwise. "Just because you don't like your new boss, that's not my problem," I said. "I didn't say I didn't like my new boss," he said. "You implied it. And did you consider that maybe it's your manner that is making people uncooperative?" "There's nothing wrong with my manner," he said, looking offended. "You're snooty." "I am not. People around here just don't like strangers. Damn small-town mentality. Well, excuse us, Mr. Big City Slicker, for wanting to know people before we trust them, I said hotly, and if you think that you working for a git like Hawk Hardwick has nothing to do with it, then you're wrong. I was glad to hear that some of the townspeople were as unhappy with the new police situation as I was. Chris Constantine ran his hand through his hair in frustration. I didn't choose him as my boss, he said. Please continue with your story. You were saying that you were spying on the Hardwicks. Spying? See, that's exactly what I'm talking about. You're having a dig at me. It might have been my imagination, but I was sure that the corners of his lips twitched a little. Apologies, madam, he said. Please continue with your statement. I rolled my eyes. Fine, if he was going to be like that, so was I. I crossed my arms over my chest and glared at him. I have given you my statement. Lorcan Hardwick broke in here in an attempt to try and scare me off. That is all I have to say. He nodded. Yes, he broke in here and stole absolutely nothing, and committed no acts of vandalism, and did not harm you in any way. Are you sure that you've checked all of your slices of cakes are not missing? Ha! Captain Shield is as funny as Captain Villain, I said. If you must know, he did steal 3 slices of cake. The weirdo. You can ask Aunt Adele. That must be it then, he said deadpan. Dell's cakes are so good that now people are breaking in here to steal them. You are frankin' hilarious, I hissed. And you are absolutely adorable, he said. His mouth was twitching again like he wanted to laugh. I stared at him, gobsmacked. The nerve of him! I had been going to tell him about the first break-in and the overturned bins earlier in the day, but now I knew that he wouldn't believe me. And even Aunt Adele was going to contradict me. After all, she had already said that she thought it was the ghosts tipping over the bins. I had my doubts now that I knew that Lorcan Hardwick had broken in, but it was no use. I was in such a sour mood by now that my good intentions of telling him about our sugar daddy theory completely went out of the window. Let him figure it out for himself, since he was such a super cop. I showed him out, and was very annoyed when he tipped his hat at me. Gosh darn it, why did he have to be so charming? Hi, this is the end. Comment the code word fantabulous to confuse anyone who hasn't reached the end of this video. Thanks for playing along.